Alright, so describe to me your experiences growing up in Canada.
Well, I grew up in a small town in Newfoundland, and it was about the size of St. Albans. And we had a lot of fun growing up. We used to, do a lot of hiking and a lot of fishing.
Yeah.
And we'd go down the beach in the evening, light bonfires in the summertime, and play soccer.
Yeah.
That was a big game. Everybody played soccer.
Yeah.
And one Sunday afternoon, I was going out, and I was supposed to go visit my grandmother, and my mother told me not to go playing soccer, to go right to my grandmother's, and I said, yeah, okay. But I changed my mind and decided I'd go play a little soccer first. And I got my leg broke.
Oh no.
So,
So you grew up in Canada, right?
in Newfoundland. That was a British colony at the time.
Yeah.
And then I moved from there to Canada. I was in Canada a couple of years, and in the early 40s I came over to the United States.
Yeah.
And went in the Army.
Yeah.
And went to the Philippines, the Philippine Islands, and I was in a military police, and that was exciting.
Yeah.
Used to have 1 week on foot patrol in the small towns, and 1 week on motor patrol.
Yeah.
And I used to get a lot of escort jobs, like picking up Red Cross, the Red Cross girls, show girls and that,
Yeah.
and escorting them to the different bases.
It was this during World War One or World War Two?
World War II.
Yeah.
I'm not that old. I'm only
Yeah.
85.
Alright.
And I came back from over in the Philippines. I went commercial fishing.
Yep.
And every time we get into a big storm, I used to say, boy, when I get in out of this one, I'm not going to come out anymore.
Yeah.
But I ended up putting in 35, 37 years altogether. So.
And you fished out of Massachusetts?
I fished out of Massachusetts and Rhode Island. But we used to fish all the way from Cape Cod all the way down to Norfolk, Virginia.
Yeah.
And I went deep sea scalloping, went sword fishing for a while. And there was a outfit came in that wanted to go do some experimenting in deep sea lobster, and there was nobody doing deep sea lobster at that time.
Yeah.
So took a job with them, and we had to build, they bought boats and had to convert them over to different equipment and everything. So we spent about 6 months working on the boats and that. So get them all ready, and then we went deep sea fishing. I did that for a while, and then I went back to scalloping, and then I went dragging again, little swordfish, gill net, and I did just about everything.
Yep.
And then we bought our own boat, my brother and I, and we had our own boat for about 20 years. We fished out of Newport, Rhode Island. And we used to go down to Virginia, fish down there in the wintertime for a while, and then come back up.
And any interesting stories, like when you were an MP, that you have to share?
Well, there used to be a lot of fights in the bar rooms and things like that.
Yeah.
We used to have to go get guys sometimes. We know where they didn't show up. We know where they were. We go have to haul them out of bed. Sometimes they'd be in bed with their girlfriends in town someplace. And we always had a bunch of guys locked up.
Yeah.
I mean, you let them out. They're goofballs. You let them out today, and a week later, they wouldn't show up again, and you'd pick them up again someplace and take them up to their court martial. And they some of these guys used to take off and they go to these little villages, and you find out where they were, but they were hard to find sometimes, and sometimes they would sneak back and get back on the base before you could get them.
Yeah.
Oh, that was fine, because if they got back on their own, you couldn't charge them for being in AWOL. So, and then you didn't have the hassle to go to court, you know.
Yeah.
But it was interesting.
In when you were a child in Newfoundland, didn't like a warship crash?
Oh yeah, there was two American Navy ships there. I was about 15, I guess, and 16, I guess. That was in 1942, I think, the year before I left.
Yep.
And we stood up on the cliff. There was Ash Wednesday, and when we found out, we just came out of church, and we found out it was a shipwreck. So we had horses. We never had no cars or anything then.
Yep.
So we went down there, and we got up on the cliff. The cliff was about 250 to 300 feet high,
Yeah.
and there was a destroyer on a ledge just about probably quarter of a mile offshore, and the seas were breaking over it. And every time the seas would break over it, you see so many sailors getting washed off.
Yeah.
And it was, I think it was 140 of them lost. And you couldn't do anything for them because the seas would come in and the cliff was so high. When they get in so far, you couldn't even see them. They could go in and, you know, the water was so cold and everything.
Yeah.
And then we found out about a couple of hours later there was another ship. That the one that we saw first was the USS Truxton.
Yeah.
And I think they just came down. I was told that they left someplace in Maine and were coming down to Argentia at the Navy base down there.
Yeah.
And then we found out there was another one, the Truxton, about a few miles up the coast when ashore. And there was a lot of the guys lost there too because the water was so cold. They got in, but they couldn't get up over the cliff, so they just froze to death.
Jesus.
It was sad. That's one thing I never forgot. I still can see that as plain
Huh.
if it was yesterday.
They wrote a book on that, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to share?
Something. Well, when I came here first, I tried to get in the Army right away, but there was some mix-up because I wasn't a citizen. They told me I couldn't get in the Army, but they kept calling me back. So about the third time, I told them, hey, I'm not coming up here anymore. I mean, you know, if you want me to go in the Army, I'll go. I want to go, but don't call me up and then tell me because I'm not a citizen, they're not going to take me.
Yeah.
So finally, the guy told me I could join the Army of the United States. And I said, well, what the hell do you think I've been trying to do? And he said, well, you wanted to join the regular Army. And I said, well, what the hell's the difference? I said, the Army of the United States or the regular Army? I didn't know the difference. I just came to this country.
Yeah.
He said, well, and he said, the only difference is, he said, I can see, he said that the regular Army got RA in front of their serial number, where the Army of the United States just got a straight, number,
Yeah.
like you have on your dog tags.
Oh yeah.
So, but he says, if you want to join the regular Army, he said, you can join the Army of the United States first. And he says, when you get into training, get through training, he said, go to your company commander and tell him that you want to join the regular Army.
That's strange.
And I was so confused. I didn't know what the heck was going on. So I said, okay. So I went in the Army of the United States. So after I got through basic training down at Fort Knox, Kentucky, I went up to the company commander and told him, that I wanted to join the regular Army. And the guy said, well, what the hell is the difference? He said, you're in the Army. And I said, I want to join the regular Army. I didn't know why. That's the way I started out. I thought they were a little better than the Army of the United States. So he said, well, and he said, I haven't got time to process that now. He said, because you're going to be shipped up to New Jersey. So he says, when you get up there, he said, go see your company commander up there, and they'll take care of it. So we got about 2 weeks furlough, so we went home, and when I came back to New Jersey, about a week after, I went up to the company commander and I told him what the story was.
Yeah.
And he said, gee, he said, I'd like to help you, but he said, you're going to be shipped out of here in about 3 weeks, so he says, you know, you won't have time to do anything. He says, when you get overseas, he said, and get settled, he said, go to your company commander, he said, they'll take care of it for you. So, okay, I ended up over in Manila,
Yeah.
and then they shipped us up the coast further to a little town called San Fernando.
And where's that?
That was in the Philippine
Oh,
Islands.
yeah.
Yeah, and on Luzon, the big island. So after they had a police station down on the beach there, it was a real nice place. So I went up to see the company commander there, and he said, I don't know who told you that. He says, we can't do this over here. He says, don't worry about it. He said, when you go back, he said, to the United States and get discharged, he said, if you're going to get an honorable discharge, they'll give you your citizen papers. So I said, okay. So when I came back, I asked the guy about it when I was getting my discharge, and the guy said, well, I'll put down citizen anyway. I said, no. I said, I'm not a citizen. I got to have papers to prove I'm a citizen. He said, well, you're in the Army. He said, you're supposed to be a citizen. And I said, but I'm not a citizen. So he said, I said, well, don't put that down there. I said, I don't want to get in trouble, because what happened is I said I was a citizen, and they checked up on it, found out I didn't have papers to come after me. He wouldn't bother him. He'd probably be gone someplace else.
Yeah.
So I said, well, forget about it. I said, so I got my discharge. So he said, when you get your discharge, go back to where you enlisted. He said, your hometown.
Yeah.
And he said, go down to the immigration, he says, and show him your discharge and tell him you want to get your citizen papers. So I came back. A week or so later, I went down, and he looked at the discharge and congratulated me for being in the Army and that, and told me that I had to go to court, file in the 3rd District Court in Providence like everybody else.
Jeez.
So I kind of got disgusted. I said, "Out of hell with it." So I went home, and a few years later, I went down to live on Martha's Vineyard.
Yep.
So I had a friend of mine I was working with down there. He was a part-time cop, so he used to go deer hunting. So he wanted to know if I like to go hunting. And I said, "Boy, I haven't been hunting since I left Newfoundland." I said, when I was about 50, 60 years old. And he said, "Well, if you'd like to go," he said, "I know where I can get you a nice shotgun." So I said, "You do?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "My brother-in-law got a nice one."
Yeah.
He said, "Up at my house." He said, "He lives up in Springfield, so he comes down here every year to go deer hunting." But he said he didn't come down last year, and he said this year, he said, nah, he didn't feel good, so he wasn't coming down. He was getting too old for that. So he said, he told me to sell the guns. So he said, "I'll give you a good deal on it." I said, "Good." I bought the gun. So then I went down to the town office to get my hunting license, and the clerk asked me, he's filling out the papers, and he asked me if I was a citizen. I told him no. He said, "Have you got a gun?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Where is it?" And I said, "It's home in the house." He said, "You can be arrested for having a gun."
Jeez.
So I said, "What do you mean?" I says, "I got an honorable discharge from the Army." I said, "I handle law. I had all kinds of guns." He said, "That don't make any difference." He said, "You get that gun out of your house and give it to Wally," because he knew Wally too.
Yeah.
And he said, "You give that to Wally," he said, "to keep for," he said, "until you get your license, until you get your citizenship."
Jeez.
So I had to go off the island and go to Providence and file papers, and then they called me up about a month later and told me that the time to appear up in court. So I had to go up to Providence, and I finally got my citizen papers. So that was quite a runaround.
Yeah. All over the world.
Yeah, all the way across they discharged us out in California, and then paid us, and give us a ticket home.
Well, that's pretty good. All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah.